welcome to the Hidden Why podcast. I'm pumped and excited. Today I've got a guest with me, Erik Newton. Erik, welcome.
Hey, Lee, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's good to, I actually don't often do, I'm just sitting here looking at your face and I don't often do interviews video to video, face to face. So we'll see how it goes. Sometimes the internet connectivity is a bit poor, but it is enjoyable to watch who you're talking to when you're doing these things, isn't it?
Yeah, the video is fun. It's also funny because you get a lag sometimes, like we're getting right now. So, your face is moving about a half a second behind your words. It's a good way to keep it lighthearted.
I like it. Let's do it. And, mate, I commented on your beard. You've got this rad beard, and I use that word rad, and beards are just the thing that are in these days, and I can't grow one. I'm a little bit jealous because I can't really grow a really cool beard. What is it about beards that make them so in right now?
I think that we've been making this move back to nature. I think we're in this phase in culture where we're stuck in social media and in our devices, and there's something that's really appealing about being a lumberjack, being out in the woods, just working with your hands, learning how to weld. Not having to be stuck in your laptop all day, but instead working with an axe, And I think that's what's driving the cultural movement, because if you look at the hipster stylings, it's all about this sort of, hearkening back to a simpler time.
Yeah, and we're making that connection, isn't it? And I notice it certainly, but sometimes I wonder if I'm just noticing it because I'm there myself as well. But how many other people maybe aren't on that sort of mission or journey to live life more fully and really be more amongst nature and united, I guess.
That you're probably right that it's about living life more fully, and that it's expressing itself in this getting back to nature. But that doesn't, that's not the only way to live life fully. It's just what people seem to be doing right now.
Yeah, I because I was thinking about it before I started this conversation with you, and I was thinking, we've moved away from that where we had to be trim, shaved, short cut, and this type of success figure, I guess. And to me, that's rubbish. I'd just rather be myself, and that's why I've got quite long hair, etc. But yeah, well, I mean, is that something that we're starting to realize that this image of what we thought was success is actually not conducive to really living life fully?
Yeah, well, you said two things that sparked me. One is I'm not so sure what the true self is. This idea of let's be ourselves, I get the desire for it, but I'm a little skeptical that it exists. Uh-huh. On the other hand, yeah, I don't think the life that we've been living has been fulfilling, and it certainly hasn't felt genuine for the last, decade of popular culture. It seems like we've been going more and more into the superficial and the immediate. And, at the very least, we're going to experience a pendulum swing back to the more in-depth and rich and full.
A meaningful life?
A meaningful life. But then again, here we are with that word meaning again, which is akin to truth and true self. And I'm for the most part skeptical about those concepts.
Okay.
I get what people are after with them, but I'm skeptical about them.
So where does the skepticism arise from? I mean, what is the reason for that? Because I'm all about the true self and really trying to find that, because I think, the self that we define how we define ourselves, maybe the ego, the super ego, or whatever you might call it, is based on this conditioning of everything that's external to us. And that's really not who we truly are. Now, is the true self individual, or is it just something that we all are? Are we all united in the same common sense? But really connecting inwardly and finding out what's really important, what you really value, and then, designing your life around that so you can have that level of self represented in your life.
Yeah. When I hear you talk about it that way, it strikes me that it might just be a semantic difference. But for me, what I've discovered is that the greatest, we'll call it peace, the greatest presence, centeredness that I've found in my experience has come from letting go of what I always thought to be self. It's come from releasing into the void, if you will,
Hmm.
Uh, and by the void, I mean kind of the great unknowable nature of what it means to exist.
Hmm.
We really can't, if you get right down to it, we really can't know that the experience that we're having is objectively true, right? We might be in a simulation. We don't really know
No.
that we're not.
Yeah.
All we know, all we know is that an experience of some kind is happening. And so there is an experiencer, but that experiencer could be a brain in a vat. I mean, Descartes said this the first time in whatever he was around, 1500s, I want to say. And,
Sounds good.
I'm not going to pretend I know the dates. But all we can know is that there's an experience happening, and the nature and the quality of it, while we are having an experience, we don't know that it's true or valid. And so it raises this question of how important really are we? And by we, I mean this personality construct that we
Well,
live
how really
by.
important is this experience then?
Right, exactly. And my answer is that it's not important. The degree of importance that it bears is completely subjective and made up by us individually.
Hmm.
And for me, and I can see how that could be very dark for some people. For me, it gives me immense freedom. It gives me immense peace to know that this agenda that I call an identity, this agenda driven personality, isn't that important, and that
Yeah.
it's going to die, and that I won't be able to take any of it with me, and that it just doesn't matter ultimately.
And we know the experience ends. And as you said, I mean, it can be a dark thought. If people are listening to this, they might say, well, if the experience is of no importance, then why am I here? Why would I live this life? And then for you, you say it gives me great freedom. So on one hand, you can have some great darkness in this thought. But on the other hand, it can be very freeing as well, and really, I guess, connect you again. For me, it's connecting to a deeper truth of what it means to live and be here. I mean, what is your thoughts on why we are here experiencing this?
Well, again, I don't think there's a. Well, there might be a why, right? There might be some grander, mystical, spiritual why. You know, bigger thinkers than myself have opined that you know, it's self knowing itself. It's God knowing Himself is the why. The experience is God knowing Himself, and that we are God knowing Himself. That's what we're doing here. And that seems like a very lovely and elegant way to put it, but I don't know if that's it. I think that if there is a why, it's probably not entirely grokkable by this limited mind.
Hmm.
But what I do know is. I don't know why, but I know is. This is happening in terms of my experience of it.
Hmm.
It might not be objectively true, but I am experiencing it. And the isness of it can be beautiful, right? The ongoing unfolding nature of this thing that we're experiencing right now in this moment is perfectly sufficient.
Yeah.
And the pain and the anxiety, the darkness that you referenced, that I referenced, only enters in when you start worrying that there's something wrong with what is.
Hmm.
The is shouldn't be the way that it is.
Yeah.
And then you start getting up and, oh, well, if I shouldn't be this way, I've got to change it. There's something wrong with me. Boom, pain.
Hmm.
But actually, is perfectly sufficient.
So if the is perfectly sufficient, what drives you in particular in the direction of the experience that you're taking? What is the reason why you do the things you do?
Yeah, I ask myself that question every day, as a matter of fact. And
Yeah.
I can tell you how it's transitioned. I don't think that I have the perfect answer, frankly.
Yeah.
The way it has transitioned through time, I can tell you, in the past, when I was a divorce lawyer and building a practice that was successful and trying to be a man about town and meet all the ladies, in the city, and, living that life, as outwardly successful as it may have appeared, I was driven mostly by avoiding pain. I was driven mostly by a fear that I was unlovable, I think is probably the most concise way to put it. Uh, I had a made up history of being abandoned or by the people closest to me, and had lots of evidence about that from childhood and from my father figures. And, I was always trying to avoid that
Hmm.
outcome. And by trying to avoid it, frankly, putting it into reality. And that's how that's how I lived most of my life. And it got me where I got. I had a very successful law firm, and I had some money, and I had dates.
What was the pain gone?
Sorry, say again?
Was the pain gone once you got there?
Oh, definitely not. And it wasn't fulfilling.
Yeah.
That's the thing about doing something to avoid something else, is that the results are never fulfilling, because you can never fill that hole. You're always going to be having to do something more to avoid the outcome that you're ultimately scared of. Whereas if you surrender, what I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but for me, in the surrender to it, that's where peace opened up. That's where I suddenly started to find satisfaction in life. And the short story for me is the law firm crumbled. We lost everything. All of those trappings that I thought made me who I was went away. And in the wake of it, I was left with this question: well, then who am I? And
wow. Yeah. Big questions.
right, who am I, and what's it all about? And the answer was, well, I'm not my stuff. I'm not my history. I'm not my feelings, because I was just depressed. So who am I? And, I asked that question for a year, and eventually an answer arose, which I've already alluded to. Experience is kind of a logical answer. I don't know if it really resonates in words, but and out of that, to answer to put the period on the thread that we're talking about here, I came to a new way of deciding what to do. You asked, how do you know what to do? And the answer used to be, to avoid pain or to avoid some bad outcome, you do things.
Yeah.
Now the answer is more like, I allow the world to unfold in front of me, and I move towards what is appealing.
Right.
It's not so
whatever's
much
fulfilling, or whatever makes you. Is it about fulfillment, or is it about how you feel?
For me, it's more of a feeling. I mean, and I hesitate saying it that way, because as it's coming out of my mouth, it sounds a little wishy-washy. But it's about allowing, my friend. It's about allowing instead of forcing. I think most of my life I've forced. Now I allow.
Yeah.
And in the allowing, so much more is happening, and it feels more fulfilling.
Yeah.
But then now we're down another rabbit hole, because if something's fulfilling, then there must be something to be fulfilled, which means there must be some purpose, and that's where I get skeptical again.
Yeah.
I don't think that there necessarily is, but I do have an experience of more fulfillment than ever before. I'm certainly happier than I've ever been.
Yeah, I love it. And look, there's some great insights there. And again, I mean, these wormholes can be deep, so we can risk going down them. But certainly, that's exactly what I found too. Is that whole force? You try and force yourself, to cover that pain, to work harder at the job, to earn more money, and in that force, it caused me a lot more stress, and it seemed like a battle that I was never going to win.
Right.
And that's sort of where I made that change and transition to how I live life now. How long ago was it for you when this all happened, when the law firm collapsed, etc.?
Let's see. The law firm went under about 2 years ago. Actually, almost exactly 2 years ago. And then I sat on my butt in a kind of depression, a fruitful depression, I'll say, but a depression for about a year.
Yep.
Then I started working on the Together project, and we launched it about 8 months ago.
8 months ago.
February 2016, we launched it.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So let's talk about the Together project. So what is the purpose of the project? Talking about purpose.
Yeah, it's to explore human relatedness. And that's the broad umbrella. Really what we do is we look at romantic relationships with an eye towards crushing shame. My idea is that we all say this phrase, we say relationships take work, but nobody really knows what that means. And nobody really knows how to do it. And nobody wants to talk about it because it usually means acknowledging some of the dark sides, some of the challenges. And so with Together, we have a podcast and a magazine. On the podcast, we interview couples with an aim towards just getting to the truth. Like really, really, what does it take to be in this relationship? What do you guys face? Like, stop telling me the PR. Get through the fluff. Just tell me the challenges and how you deal with them. And then the magazine is a series of personal revelations from journalists and from myself and from real people about their experience in relationships.
Okay, I like that. So in the podcast, you interview people that are in quality relationships, or do you just interview people that are in relationships?
All kinds.
All kinds.
Yes. I mean, we've had some wonderful interviews with couples who are happy, right? That's obvious that you're going to get some good wisdom from long-term happy couples, but really some of the best interviews have been with people who are in transition or who don't know what's going to happen or who are in the middle of a fight and are willing to be transparent about the process that they're experiencing. And, my goal is to be respectful but direct with them about what they're going through. And we've had some really fun stuff come out.
Yeah. I guess you'd find a lot of, in those relationships where it might look all fluffy on the outside, but once you dig deeper and find out some of the truths in it, you could have some really powerful learnings. And so could the couple that are being interviewed.
Right. I like to think it goes both ways. A lot of the couples say that it feels like therapy and that they feel like they're, but definitely for the listener. And for me, because I usually don't know anything about the couple when they come into the studio. I've had producers tell me that I should do pre-interviews, but I enjoy so much the discovery in the moment. So a lot of times
it makes it more authentic, that sort of a process too.
It does. I mean, it can cause a conversation to meander a touch. I have to admit
it
that.
Can.
If this were radio, I would probably need to be a little more succinct. But it's a podcast. We have time to explore a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, people tell me about infidelities, open relationships. People see things about their dynamic that they've never seen before. It's really a privilege. It's really a privilege to be able to do it.
So tell us, you are a divorce lawyer. Is that your background?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got obviously a lot of experience dealing with divorced couples and those situations, and I can imagine that's not always pretty, but certainly you've got the expertise around it. Are you married yourself? Have you been through divorce?
No, I'm in a 4-year relationship right now, and we're looking at marriage this summer, but we're not married. I've never been married. Thank you, I appreciate it. And I like to say I've been through 1,000 divorces but never been married.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't actually know how many I've been through, but I've been through a good chunk of divorces.
You've dealt with them a lot, so you've got some wisdom around relationships. I'm sure you can share with us. What is it about marriage? I mean, is marriage something that we need or still desire in this life? I mean, I don't really care for marriage, I'll be honest. And my partner, I don't know if she's the same. It feels like she's the same, but maybe deep down she wants that big wedding. So it's good. You got to be careful. But what is it?
Well, I don't think we need marriage as individuals. Culturally, it maybe is a different conversation. As individuals, we don't need marriage, and we don't need monogamy for that matter. We don't need non-monogamy either. We really need what we each individually need to grow to our next phase. Now, that said, I am agnostic as to what people choose to do in their relationships as long as it generates self-awareness. But there is something about marriage that's different, that's more impactful, that's more rooted to our unconscious motivations than any other relationship in this world. There's something cultural about this merger of two into one. It's archetypal. It's rooted in our communal DNA, this union of opposites, if you will, and it impacts people in a way that they never predict, and that is the magic of officiating a marriage, which is something I love to do. I've officiated around 200 weddings, and it's the magic of a relationship as it blossoms in that phase. You just can't have that kind of commitment in any other way in this world. And it's not to say that people should do it, but if people want the fruits of lifelong commitment, which are many, there are great challenges as well, but there are extraordinary fruits in lifelong commitment for personal growth. There's no other way to get them, or no better way, no more intense way.
So what sort of growth are we talking about? What sort of things, or the fruits that you're talking about, that can come from that sort of a relationship?
Well, in my view, people come together in order to drive up one another's most unresolved challenges and greatest strength simultaneously. And I believe this is why you see couples fighting with each other more bitterly than they do with anyone else in their lives.
Yeah.
There's something about that intimate relationship when sex and real love, real deep intimate love gets involved. Your armor is down, and your youngest, most terrified internal self is vulnerable. And when that happens, we act our worst and we act our best.
Yeah.
And both of those facts trigger wonderful opportunities for personal awareness and growth.
Yeah.
The way that you move through each of those issues as they come up. You're having a dispute in your relationship. You're feeling very, very positional and angry, and you know that you're right, and you know that she's wrong, and damn it, why can't she just understand it? What are you doing in this? You don't need this baloney. When those moments arise, you have a choice. You can ignore it and create distance. You can break up, or, and what I suggest if you want to have a relationship, is you move through it. The way you move through it is understand your partner's experience in that moment that's being triggered by those circumstances, and you dig into one another. You understand one another fully. And what you find, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, what you find is that usually the thing that you need to do to make your partner feel safe in that moment is also the thing that you need to grow and mature in the area that's the most repressed. So it works in both directions. You make your partner feel safe by doing the thing that you need to do to mature.
Right.
And vice versa. It's working in the other direction as well. And that's how you create intimacy. And in a marriage, I guess that wasn't the last thing I'll say. This is the last thing I'll say about it until you ask me another question. In a marriage, it's not just that you have a government contract that says you can't get out of it. And it's not just that you've pledged in front of your community that this thing is for real. While both of those two are significant, there's something even greater about this commitment in the human experience that makes it harder to get out of and drives things up more intensely. And there's no other way to replicate that.
So is it important to do that whole ritual, the marriage process? I mean, to get that really strong bond, is that the ceremony part of that, to just make it more solid, I guess? Like, does it have some significance?
Well, as you can probably tell from the way I talk about things, I'm not so sure about absolutes, but I will say that in general, the ceremony does two things. Humans are ceremonially oriented. Graduation ceremonies, inauguration ceremonies, religious ceremonies, and marriage ceremonies. It's how we mark transition in community. And so ceremony in general is important, but then marriage ceremony specifically is unique because while you can make a marriage commitment in private, maybe with an officiant at City Hall, for instance, you can't. Marriage exists by and of community. If it's just two people in the forest who don't have any community, there's no purpose in getting married because they're the only two people around.
Yeah.
But the concept of marriage is written of the notion of broader community. And therefore, it's the community that sanctions this thing called marriage. The government is the one that gives you the piece of paper, but it's community, your community, and the community at large that is what makes it happen, that makes it available, that makes this transmutation manifest. And so, you need the community, in my view, to make the marriage happen.
Yeah.
And then the marriage itself, so community causes the marriage to happen, and then the existence of the marriage in turn supports community and gives greater strength to communal structure. And then I think, taking it even a step further, that there's a two-way relationship that is ongoing. When the marriage is having trouble, I think it's a community's responsibility to stand for the marriage as opposed to the individuals. And then when the community's having trouble, I think it's the marriage's responsibility to go stand for communication within the community.
I like it, and I asked that question because I am married, but we haven't had that ceremony. So it's interesting, and you've given me a lot of thought to think on there, and what it all really truly means. And perhaps I do it to avoid making that bond really that official, so I can escape those hard moments when I need to. I don't really know, but
how long have you been married?
We got married. Actually, we've been together for 7 years now. We've got 2 kids, and we got married when we got to Japan, and it wasn't really out of a choice. It was because to get the visas for all parties, we needed to have that certificate of marriage.
Is she Japanese?
No.
It was some vagary of international law.
Yeah, she's Aussie, and just so for the visa or residency here, you need to be married.
That's fascinating. I wish she were on the show right now because I want to know how she feels about it. What do you think? How do you think she feels about that there's a marriage, but that you did it for this bureaucratic reason?
Yeah, well, look, and that's what I said before. I'd like to think I know how she feels, but I don't really know. And that's probably the hard part of our relationships is having that communication where we're really both transparent about how we feel. So how she feels, I mean, we are sort of under the impression that a ceremony is good, and we actually almost had a wedding booked. Actually, we did book a location, an event, but then it felt like it was for everyone else and not for us.
Yeah.
So we decided both that, no, let's not do that. Let's spend that money instead on going on a holiday for ourselves, which is sort of what we did. So we're both, about that. Well, why invest this money into a marriage that seems, we both sort of feel, and this is at least what I think she feels, is that it seems almost wasteful to invest that sort of money. And I know you don't have to invest the amount some people do, but we just felt it was sort of wasteful, and perhaps that could be better spent elsewhere in enriching lives. So that's how we felt about it. That's, I think, how we feel about it. That's at least how I feel about it still. But I am a person that, has a big heart, and I do like that idea of bringing people together to celebrate the love and have that ceremony. I do believe in that. So, interesting.
Well, so again, I'm personally agnostic to what people decide to do with those, with marriage ceremonies and whether they get married or not. But the question really, since we're talking about meaning in the show, is what does marriage mean to you?
Yeah.
And then based on that, what's it worth? Or, what ought you to do?
Yeah.
But what does it mean to you? Do you know?
No, I don't. I haven't really sort of thought about it or asked that question of what it means to me. I guess it's to me, it feels like, and again, that this probably comes to my inner self, the true self. I like that freedom, and I don't like being controlled, and things like that. You know, it seems bureaucratic, and it seems like that's something that society's created for us to have to do.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to be a have to thing. I want it to be a we want to thing.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, I guess, my reluctancy to do it, because I want us
but you
both
did
to
do it.
Hey?
But you did do it because you had to.
Because I had to, I know.
And now it's been done.
And now it's done.
So does that leave you feeling stuck?
No, not really. I mean, we still talk about it, and, you know, we want to do the ceremony thing at some stage, and I don't know. I guess both of us don't have the attention towards it, or the energy to put towards it. So we both sort of, I guess, become a bit more relaxed. And I think probably, if I reflect deeper on this, is that me seeing her not really that interested, at least from an outside perspective, makes me then not want to be that interested, and probably vice versa.
Right, of course, yeah, that's definitely happening.
So that happens, yeah. So
yeah,
and I just think on that at the moment, but yeah, interesting stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, a couple
I
things.
can see you're interested, so let's do it.
I love this. Well, on that first, or on the second topic, the one about her being interested and you being interested, and each of you looking for the clue from the other.
Yep.
I think you're really onto something with that. You know, there's this experience. There's something I've noticed in relationships, that if it's good enough to be good, which yours is, it's good enough to be extraordinary. And the measure is how willing you are to cause it to be extraordinary by really, really understanding one another and creating that intimacy. And also, frankly, sometimes by just giving the right signals of love and affection. And if you've already noticed it, you noticed it without anybody having to call it out, that means it's almost certainly occurring. That each of you is looking for the right signal of devotion from the other. And I think you might want to just play with doing it. Just rote expression. Just don't worry about the meaning behind it. Just give the expression and see what starts to flower from that. Because I bet you, because intimacy really develops in a space of trust.
Yeah.
You know, and trust comes from knowing that you can count on the other person, and that you're in a safe environment with the other person. And that the other person wants to be with you is one of the most beautiful expressions of that they're safe.
Yeah.
Or that you're safe. You know, if you share with her this way that you want to spend your life with her, she's going to feel extraordinarily comfortable in that. Or it'll trigger her, which is a whole other thing.
I'll deal with that when it comes.
And then you can deal with it. But my guess is at first it'll make her feel so safe. Yeah. And then she'll re-express that back to you, and it'll become an echo chamber of trust.
Yeah.
As opposed to a downward spiral of fear, which I wouldn't say that you're in that. But, you know, if you have the opportunity to create a spiral, have it be an upward spiral.
Yeah, rather than downward.
And then on this issue of freedom, I hear this one a lot. This idea, or this concern that I'm giving up some kind of a freedom. Freedom's of value to me, and by being in this relationship, or by having this child, or by taking this job, or by buying this dog, I'm giving up some measure of freedom.
It's like that interdependency. Is it sort of related?
That's an interesting question. I think codependency is that what you mean by interdependency?
No, independency. So independency is sort of that level of freedom where you can be your own person and be free to do as you will.
Yes, that is what I'm talking about. I thought you were making a bigger leap to codependency, which is an interesting thought too. But no, yes, what you're saying about independence is right on. It's this idea that you've got to be independent to be free. Yeah. And that you need to have these outward trappings of independence in order to be free. And I think that that's if I may say so, I think it's a stage of personal development that is a good one, but that there's one beyond it, which is a realization that freedom is within you all the time, that freedom is present by your nature of being. Like freedom is. You are freedom. And the experience of it is up to you. It doesn't have to do with where you live or how big or small your house is or the type of vehicle or anything. It's in you all the time. You are free. You embody freedom if you say so.
Yeah, you create your own freedom. And certainly that's something that I've experienced. And when I started out personal development, freedom is one of those values that I connected with deeply. But as I've sort of merged and moved through it, fulfillment certainly fills a piece for me now. And the idea of being happy with now and what is now and what is this. And that certainly is a part of that. So, yeah, and I guess freedom is that sense of having control.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you mean that because if you have freedom, then you're in control of destiny sort of thing? Is that where that goes for you?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to reflect on this. Probably, a big question to reflect on, but not to control where I'll go as far as the destiny piece is, but just to be free as I will right now, of control.
Right.
And that's not just others controlling me, that's control of myself as well, and my mind and how my behaviors reflect,
Yes.
who I am and stuff.
Yes. Because the experience of being trapped is also internal, right? The experience of freedom or trapped, both are
just internal
concept
creations.
Yeah.
So let's move on. I want to talk about some of the practical tips and bits of advice you would suggest for the audience to really help us in our relationships. What can enhance them? What can make them real and stronger?
Well, what we hear on the show all the time and what you see reflected in the literature is this concept of communication.
Yeah.
And I chuckle at that one because we hear it and see it and read it so often that it's just become a cliche. I think it's one of these statements, oh, you got to communicate. It just sort of floats right on by people at this point. They don't even pay any attention to it. Oh, yeah. And I know I got to communicate.
We got it, but we don't do it.
Right, we got it, but we don't do it. And I think it's because we don't really know what that means. Okay. I mean, what does it mean to communicate? Does it mean you come home and tell your partner you love her and then go pop a beer and sit on the couch? And sometimes it might actually mean that, but it probably doesn't usually mean that. But what does it actually mean? And there's a lot of answers to that question, but to sort of get into the conversation, what I've noticed is that one of the initial things that it means is you've got to feel free to share with your partner anything that's critical to your identity in that moment without fear of being shamed. So, for instance, people oftentimes will, this is actually one that comes up a lot. Somebody will realize that they're not happy in their career.
Yeah.
But they got married kind of on the premise that they were going to be that person who had that career. Maybe it has to do with the prestige of the career. Maybe it has to do with the amount of money, the geographic location, who knows. But you sort of started the relationship on this idea that you were this one kind of person. And now you're questioning, maybe I'm not that guy anymore. Maybe I'm just not the guy who wears that suit anymore. You've got to be able to share that with your partner. Even if it's an unresolved question, you've got to be able to share the concern, the thought process, the fears, the excitement, all of it around it, without fear of being squashed. Now, that said, a lot of times when you share something that's risky like that, and maybe to some of your listeners that doesn't sound risky, and maybe to some that it does. We can come up with riskier ideas. But when you share something that's risky, you by definition are risking that the other person is going to react negatively.
How's she going to judge you, and why is the other person with you based on that original definition that you had?
Yeah. Your job is to share it. Their job is to allow it.
Yeah.
And then the responsibilities flip. Then your job is to allow their reaction, and their job is to share their reaction.
Yeah.
And if that's done in, and there's different ways that that can be done, right? If it's done in a shaming, personality blasting, diminishing fight, it's obviously not very productive. If it's done in what we consider to be a communicative process, where each person is saying, look, this is what's coming up for me around this, and I want you to know what that is. Uh, and they just go back and forth and back and forth. That's how people grow. That's how people learn about one another. That's how you create intimacy. And that's the first step of what we mean by communication. You've got to be able to share something that's fundamental to you without fear of being shamed. Yeah. Because if you can't, then you're hiding yourself. And if you're hiding yourself, then you don't really have a relationship.
Yeah, and I get that. It makes it, and that's probably why people go, yeah, no, I need to communicate, but they just avoid it because they don't want to have that open, vulnerable sort of conversation. It's like, same with diet and eating. We know we should be eating well. We know what we shouldn't probably eat, but we don't necessarily do it because it's more difficult sometimes. But that process is good, and I think we need to encourage it. How do we create the environment to do that? Because for me, thinking about, a lot of people are, both working, they're running to work, they've got kids to manage. How do they create the time rather than it's just a time where they're at the dinner table or in front of the TV trying to talk with one another openly? Like, how do you create that environment?
Well, it really just means coming up with a system that works for you.
Whatever works for you.
It really is whatever works for you. I mean, there's one I've written about that in fact, a couple that I had on the show taught me about that works real well, which is the, what do they call it? The 5+5 or the 2+2. Basically, you sit down once every certain period of time, once a month, once a week if you're really aggressive, once an anniversary if you're really laissez-faire about it. And you share 5 things that are working and 5 things that aren't working. And
I like that.
Each of you listens fully to the other one without reacting, and then you share your own. There's a twist on that I like a lot is you share one, let the other person repeat it back to you so that they make sure that they understand it.
Yeah.
So there's like a mirroring technique there. And then that person gets to have their reactions to it, but you listen and mirror back to them.
Yeah.
That takes a little longer, but it's more thorough.
Okay.
And some people don't like all the systems around it. So it's really just sitting down and it's just taking a time, once a week or once a month to sit down and give an update to one another about what you're really going through. But that's the sort of structural details. I think the more important element of it is how do you create a safe environment so that it actually flows.
Yeah.
And that's about setting an intention in advance. It's about saying out loud, we're going to talk about some things that are probably going to be challenging. And I want you to know that I do this with the intention of going deeper with you because I love you very much. And I want this relationship. And it's really that simple. If you come at it from that place,
it's powerful.
It's powerful. Yeah.
So what do you do in the situation where, perhaps one person in the relationships, and I've seen this, with people that I've known, that one person, wants that deeper, relationship, wants to go deeper, but the other person is sort of reluctant. And, one person might say, hey, let's try this, but the other person's sort of like, yeah, not really interested. How do you encourage the other person to get involved or interested, or do you? What's the thought?
I don't, I've asked this question of guests on my own show, and I had a kind of a famous relationship couple on the show saying, if one party's not willing to engage, there's not much you can do. That's a threshold. That's a threshold requirement for a strong relationship, and a lot of people believe that. I myself have gone through phases with my own partner, the one I'm with now, where sometimes one of us wants to engage, one's checked out, and it's just not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And in my own personal experience, I've been very willing to just give it time. When it's me who wants to engage and it's Aubrey who's busy with career or what have you, I'm delicately persistent. That's what's worked for me. I'm is that the word?
Delicately.
Gently persistent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I consistently say, hey, I want to have conversations about this stuff because I love you, but I know you're busy. When can we do it?
Hmm.
And sometimes I get blowback. Sometimes I get blankness. Sometimes I get a date that gets pushed and never actually happens. And sometimes we actually connect. Right now, we're in a phase where we're connecting a lot. I mean, we're just having lots of good conversations and going really deep.
Yep.
We just came out of a summer where we didn't connect at all. And I guess I reflect back on the summer when it was a little bit harder for me, and there were moments where I would say, what am I doing in this relationship if she doesn't want to engage?
Well, that's the questions that must come out to a lot of people, I feel.
I think there's any one good answer. Again, I'm agnostic to whether people stay or go as long as they're self-aware. So what I did to take my own advice in that moment was the internal personal work. And I inquired, why is this so challenging for me? Why am I so triggered by the fact that she's working so hard? And the way that came to a head, I didn't plan to use it as an example, but it's kind of perfect. That the summer ended with a knockdown, drag out fight about something that I don't even remember what it was. But when we calmed down and started looking at why each of us was so upset, we got to some core issues finally about personal value and money. And once those got aired, we both felt so fully expressed and safe that we've been on an upward spiral ever since.
Yeah. Nice.
And I had to see some dirty things about myself that I didn't want to look at in that process. And that's the best, that's the whole point. It's like, it's the opportunity. I don't know. Did that put the period on the sentence? Did I answer the question?
Absolutely, brother. Yeah. For
out
sure.
on that one.
And lots for me to reflect on, and I'm sure for the audience, mate. I know we've shared quite a bit, and I feel that we could probably talk on this for most of the day, you and I. I want to ask you some...
Yeah, are we running out of time?
Yeah. I want to ask you some quick questions, mate. One sentence answers, if you can, and we'll get through them relatively quickly, and then we'll wrap it up. The first one is, do you have a routine or ritual that you believe contributes to your success?
I do not, but I do ask myself the question, what's true, all day, all the time, whenever I have a quiet moment, and it centers me.
Okay. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Remember, you are not that important, but that you are perfect.
Okay, great. What is your meaning of success?
Peace. It's peace and happiness, I think, is what I would say to that. Peace and happiness.
Peace and happiness. And what's your favorite food?
Sushi.
Ah.
Hands down, without question, number one best food on the planet.
Get over here, man. We just had some on Sunday. Phew, unbelievable.
Don't doubt it.
Unbelievable. Hey, what's your favorite leisure activity?
Hiking.
And do you have a favorite book you'd like to recommend?
Oh, a book to recommend. Well, I do have a book to recommend, and then I have a favorite book. My book to recommend is Your Brain on Sex by Stan Siegel. Absolutely groundbreaking, limit-pushing, introspection-causing, absolute beautiful tome on personal sexual awareness.
Cool.
And then my favorite, I love all kinds of books. I love science fiction mostly, just too many to name, actually.
Yeah. That's okay. We'll stick that one in there. That sounds like a great read. Do you have a favorite quote?
The quote that drove me most of my life was this idea that if you don't ask, it's an automatic no. And now my favorite quote is that question that I already mentioned. What's true?
Yeah.
That's what centers me now.
I like them both, man. I've got 2 more questions. The first one is, do you think we all have a why? A reason, a purpose?
Yes and no. I think that our identities, the ones that are talking right now and think that they're in control, don't have a why, that whatever it is in flux, and that it's a chimera. Chasing it is probably fruitless. But I think there is probably a greater why that we can't quite grok, which is something along the lines of what we spoke about at the beginning, God knowing himself.
Nice answer. And what does living life with passion and purpose mean to you?
Well, I don't know what you mean by mean, but for me, that those feelings derive from allowing life to unfold as it is, really allowing the world to be as it is, without my need to change it getting in the way.
Yeah, good answer. Man, it's been cool. Erik, how do people reach out to you and find out more about you?
Check me out at www.together.guide. That's GUIDE is the domain extension. And that's our website where you can find our magazine and our podcast. And I would be so honored if any of you would come and listen to the show. And you can find a contact form to let me know what you think about the show on the website too. So don't be shy. I really do love hearing from folks.
Man, great stuff, Erik. Loved that you shared what you shared. And we've gone deep in this episode, so it's been brilliant. I love those conversations. I'm sure the audience does as well. So thanks for sharing, Erik. And guys, check it out at thehiddenwhy.com. I'll stick all the show notes and links and bits and pieces in there. And until next time, peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon.
Cheers.